Stormfront Publishing presents Shadows of Valor. Written by James Krieger and Adolf Riker. Performed by Thomas Richter. Chapter 2. When the veil grows thin, the wise warrior listens to both worlds. Traditional Lakota saying. May 15, 1945. 0247 local time. Wewelsburg Castle, North Rhine-Westphalia. 3 companies from the 2nd Ranger Battalion converged on Wewelsburg Castle through the pre-dawn darkness. Operation Hammer. 300 Rangers tasked with rooting out the last SS holdouts in Himmler's occult stronghold. After scaling the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc, taking a castle should have been routine. But nothing about this felt routine. Sergeant Charlie Ironknife led 2nd Squad, 1st Platoon, Charlie Company up the rocky approach, full-blood Lakota from Pine Ridge, though his file just said, American Indian. The Army didn't need to know about his grandmother's teachings, the vision quests, the things he'd learned before trading his moccasins for jump boots. They just needed a scout who could track ghosts through a snowstorm. Behind him, Lieutenant McGee checked his compass again. And again. Irish kid from Florida, built like a boxer, squinting at the dial like it had personally insulted his mother. "Compass is fucked, Sarge," McGee whispered, giving it a shake. Things spinning like a drunk Irishman. Ironknife suppressed a sigh. McGee was a good officer, led from the front, took care of his men, but the butter bar on his collar was still shiny. This was his 3rd time checking the compass in 5 minutes. "Maybe you're holding it wrong, sir," Ironknife suggested diplomatically. "I know how to read a goddamn compass, Sergeant." McGee held it at arm's length, then close to his face, then tried orienting it different ways. The needle kept spinning lazy circles, ignoring magnetic north entirely. Ironknife touched 2 fingers to the ground, feeling the Earth's magnetic fields twisted into unnatural patterns. His grandmother would have called this a poisoned place, where the ley lines had been corrupted by centuries of blood sacrifice. But explaining that to a lieutenant who probably thought Native Americans still lived in teepees wouldn't help anyone. "Could be iron deposits in the rock, sir," he offered instead. "Happens sometimes. Throws off the magnetic fields." "Iron deposits." McGee looked skeptical. "In Germany." "Yes, sir." "So what do you suggest, Sergeant?" "We can't navigate by." McGee paused, waiting for Ironknife to fill in the blank with some wilderness tracker wisdom. Ironknife pointed up through the trees. "Follow the stars, Lieutenant. They don't lie." McGee stared at him. "The stars? You want me to navigate by the fucking stars like it's 1492? "Polaris is right there, sir." Ironknife pointed to the North Star. "Been there long before compasses. Be there long after. Never moves, never lies." "Christ." McGee shoved the useless compass into his map case. "Next you'll be telling me to follow animal tracks or read the moss on trees." "Moss grows on all sides in a forest this dense, sir. Animals, though." Ironknife kept his face perfectly straight. "Deer paths usually lead to water. Water flows downhill. Downhill leads to valleys. Valleys have villages. Villages have Germans." McGee stared at him for a long moment, trying to figure out if his sergeant was fucking with him. Ironknife maintained his deadpan expression, a skill perfected through years of dealing with officers who thought they knew everything because they'd spent 4 years at West Point. Just lead the way, Sergeant," McGee finally muttered. "Yes, sir. Follow me. I'll use the ancient Indian art of looking where we're going." "That's not funny, Ironknife." "Wasn't trying to be, sir." But there might have been the ghost of a smile as Ironknife moved forward, navigating by instincts older than any compass, following the stars that had guided his people for generations. The rest of 2nd Squad spread out, Corporal Thompson humping demo charges, Private Mitchell with his ever-present rosary, Davis and his non-regulation slingshot, Henderson who moved too quiet for a farm boy, Walker who still talked about California beaches, Johnson who sometimes stared at nothing. To the south, gunfire erupted, the distinctive chatter of MG-42s answered by American bars and Thompsons. Alpha Company had hit the main gates. More gunfire from the east, Bravo Company engaging. The main assault had begun. Charlie Company's job was to slip in during the chaos, take out the command structure, open the north gates from inside. Iron Knife held up a fist. The squad froze. Guard on the wall. 20 meters. Smoking, the cherry glow marking him in the darkness. But something else made Iron Knife's skin crawl. The man's movement patterns were wrong. Too regular, like a wind-up toy. He slipped forward, trading his M1 for the tomahawk on his belt. His grandmother had blessed the blade, though he'd never told anyone that. Just said it was for close work. Each step placed where his senses, natural and otherwise, told him the earth would stay silent. One motion. Hand over mouth. Blade through the skull base. The guard dropped. But Iron Knife felt something his squad couldn't see. The man's life force didn't disperse naturally. It was pulled violently back toward the castle's heart. He'd seen this before, in places where his grandmother said the world grew thin, but his face stayed impassive. Just another Nazi down. 2 clicks on his cricket. All clear. McGee pointed. 2 more sentries. Henderson and Walker ghosted forward. Piano wire and knife work. Quick. Professional. The bodies crumpled. But Iron Knife noticed the blood. Too thick. Too dark. These men had been dead for hours, maybe days, still walking their posts through some will not their own. His medicine bundle, hidden beneath his uniform, grew warm against his chest. 4 guards at the servant entrance. Too many for quiet work. McGee pointed at Davis. The Texan grinned, pulled out his slingshot. First ball bearing dropped a guard. The others turned, not toward their fallen comrade, but toward the threat, reacting wrong, inhuman. "Go loud," McGee hissed. "Alpha's raising hell anyway." Thompson guns chattered. The guards danced and fell. Iron Knife's tomahawk split the last one's skull, and again he felt that pull, something dark fleeing the corpse, rushing deeper into the castle. They stacked on the door. Thompson had charges ready, but the door swung open at Iron Knife's touch. Unlocked. Inviting. Every instinct, trained and inherited, screamed danger, but he just said, "Careful." Could be trapped. Inside, torches instead of electric lights. The flames burned wrong. Too steady, no smoke. The air tasted of centuries. Mitchell kissed his rosary. Iron Knife saw, but didn't acknowledge, the faint golden light of true faith sparking in the darkness. From outside, the gunfire intensified, the distinctive bark of American .30 caliber machine guns mixing with German MG-42s. Alpha and Bravo were keeping the garrison busy. Time to move fast. Find the command center, kill the leadership, open those north gates before the other companies got chewed up. They cleared rooms methodically. Empty. Dust disturbed by recent passage. On one wall, fingernail scratches. "Gott ist tot." God is dead. Henderson held up a fist. Voices ahead. German. 2 SS officers, different insignia than regular troops. Older symbols that made Iron Knife's hidden medicine bundle burn. They faced a blank wall, speaking to stone. The vessels are prepared. The ceremony proceeds. The Führer's vision transcends death itself. McGee's Thompson cut them down. But Iron Knife saw their eyes as they fell. Completely black. No whites. And their blood was wrong. Too dark. Almost solid. Behind them, a heavy door. Multiple locks, symbols carved into wood that hurt to look at directly. Iron Knife felt his grandmother's teaching stir. Those were binding runes. Old ones. The kind meant to keep something in, not out. Walker picked the locks while Iron Knife stood guard, fighting the urge to touch the symbols with his medicine bundle. That would raise questions he couldn't answer. Inside, children in a cage, maybe a dozen, silent, staring. "Jesus," McGee breathed. "Get them out. Davis, Henderson, Johnson, take them to the north gate. We'll push deeper, find the command staff." The children didn't react as the Rangers freed them. One girl looked directly at Iron Knife. When she smiled, her baby teeth were filed to points. He kept his face neutral, but inside, his grandmother's warnings echoed. These were vessels, empty, waiting to be filled. "Move out," he said quietly. hoping distance would keep whatever wanted those vessels from claiming them. The girl's smile widened. Too wide. Her jaw unhinged like a snake's. "Now," she said in a voice like grinding stone. The children moved as one, not like children, like puppets jerked by invisible strings. The girl launched herself at Davis, those filed teeth sinking into his throat before he could scream. Blood fountained. She hung on like a lamprey, throat working as she fed. "Fuck!" Henderson brought his Thompson up, but another child, a boy of maybe 7, was already on him. Small fingers punched through his uniform, through skin, into his belly. The boy's arm went in up to the elbow, rooting around inside like he was searching for something. Johnson's rifle barked. The round took one child center mass, flinging the small body backward, but it got up, ribs poking through its dress shirt. No blood, just a black ichor that moved wrong, crawling back into the wound. "Fall back." McGee opened up with his Thompson, stitching a line across 3 children. They danced under the impacts but didn't fall. One's arm bent backward at the elbow, not broken, restructured. Fingers became claws. Iron Knife's tomahawk split a child's skull. The body dropped, but something else kept moving inside it. The skin bulged, rippled. A second mouth tore open in its chest, lined with what looked like fingernails instead of teeth. Davis was down, the girl still feeding. Henderson screamed as the boy pulled something purple and pulsing from his abdomen. His liver, Iron Knife realized. The child bit into it like an apple. Johnson fired his M1 Garand point blank into another child climbing up his leg. The heavy .30-06 round blew it in half, but both halves kept moving, crawling toward him with inhuman purpose. "Grenades!" McGee yanked the pin, rolled it among the children. "No, the room's too—" The explosion knocked them all down. Shrapnel sparked off stone walls. In the smoke, Iron Knife saw pieces of children moving independently. A severed hand scuttled like a pale spider. A head rolled over, mouth still working, trying to bite Johnson's boot. "Move! Move!" They ran deeper into the castle, leaving Davis and Henderson behind. Johnson stumbled along with them, blood streaming from shrapnel wounds. Behind them, wet sounds, feeding sounds. And underneath, that girl's voice, no longer pretending to be a child. The door opens. He comes. He comes. The sounds of battle echoed through stone corridors, muffled explosions, the chatter of automatic weapons. Alpha and Bravo were taking heavy casualties by the sound of it. They needed those north gates open. They descended deeper. The torches here burned blue, then purple. The air grew thick, and Iron Knife began to see them, spirits in his peripheral vision. Transparent figures, crusaders, plague victims, SS officers with mortal wounds, all walking the same direction, deeper. "You see that?" Thompson whispered, voice tight. "See what?" Iron Knife lied. Let them think it was shadows, battle fatigue, anything but the truth, that the dead walked here, pulled by something below. They found more guards, standing at attention, facing walls, not breathing. McGee's Thompson barked. The guards fell. No blood. Inside one's wound, something black and segmented writhed before dissolving. "What the fuck?" Walker started. "Keep moving," Iron Knife ordered. No time to explain what couldn't be explained. The sound started then. Not quite chanting, older than language. It bypassed the ears, etched itself on bones. Iron Knife's grandmother had warned him about such sounds. The calling songs, the summoning. Above them, an explosion shook dust from the ceiling. Then another. Demo charges or artillery. Alpha or Bravo had brought heavy weapons to bear. The castle shuddered. But they were already too deep. The architecture was wrong. They'd descended 7 flights, but it felt like 70. Blood trickled from McGee's nose. Johnson was falling behind, his wounds slowing him. The stairs opened onto a balcony. Below. "Holy Mother of God," Mitchell whispered. 13 SS officers in a circle, and in the center, something that shouldn't exist. Too many angles. Meat and geometry combined wrong. It pulsed, breathed, fed on the spirits Iron Knife could see spiraling down into it. "Demo charges," McGee ordered, voice steady despite the blood on his lip. "Every support column. Then we exit fast." They spread out. Iron Knife watched the thing below, keeping his true sight lidded. To the others, it might look like a mass of bodies, some Nazi atrocity. They couldn't see what it really was. Centuries of sacrifice melted into something hungry, something almost awake. His medicine bundle burned. The thing noticed. Not looked, noticed. Pressure against his mind. Images of his reservation burning, his grandmother's sacred places corrupted. But he'd learned to build walls young, hide what he was, what he knew. He thought about baseball statistics, radio frequencies, anything but the old ways. The pressure receded, but the SS officers' heads snapped up in unison. Without a word, they broke their circle and strode toward the edges of the chamber. Iron Knife saw now what he'd missed before. Weapons piled along the walls like offerings. MG-42s on their tripods, Schmeissers stacked like cordwood, Panzerfausts, Lugers, stick grenades. Enough to arm a company. Contact! McGee opened up with his Thompson. The .45 caliber rounds punched into the nearest SS officer just as he reached for an MG-42. But instead of falling, his hands sank into the weapon. The metal flowed like water, crawling up his arms. His uniform bulged where flesh met steel. Then his chest split open, not wounded, restructuring. His ribs became feed mechanisms. The MG-42's barrel emerged from his throat as his jaw unhinged to accommodate it. "What the fuck?" Walker started firing, his bar chattering. Another officer had plunged both arms into a pile of stick grenades. The wooden handles burrowed under his skin like parasites, his belly distended, filled with explosive heads. When he opened his mouth to scream, pull cords dangled from his teeth like a second tongue. The SS officer with the fused MG-42 returned fire. Brass casings ejected from slits that tore open along his ribs. His eyes had been replaced by the weapon's sights, tracking targets with mechanical precision. "Light the fuses! 10 seconds!" An officer pressed his face into a stack of Schmeissers. The weapons melted into him, multiple barrels sprouting from his skull like steel antlers. His hands found more weapons, a Luger fused with each palm, bayonets sliding between his fingers like claws. Another had wrapped himself in ammunition belts. They sank into his flesh, bullets visible under translucent skin like metal tumors. When he flexed, rounds fired from pores that opened across his body. Thompson worked frantically with the charges while McGee, Mitchell, and Johnson laid down covering fire, but conventional weapons weren't enough. The grenade officer pulled a cord protruding from his neck. His left arm exploded, reformed, exploded again, a repeating cycle of destruction and regeneration that sent shrapnel in all directions. Johnson took shrapnel to the throat from the exploding SS officer. He went down gurgling, still trying to fire his Garand even as blood filled his lungs. His last round took out the knee of an advancing weapon thing before he went still. One officer's transformation was worse than the others. He hadn't taken just one weapon. He'd thrown himself onto the entire pile. Weapons merged with flesh. A Panzerfaust grew from his shoulder. Multiple rifle barrels sprouted from his spine. His legs had become the tripod of an MG-34, forcing him to scuttle sideways like a crab. 7 seconds. An officer touched Private Walker. The Californian screamed as the touch spread like infection. Walker's hands flew to a dropped MP-40, but instead of picking it up, they merged with it. The steel flowed into his flesh, his fingers becoming part of the trigger mechanism. "Join," Walker said with too many voices, his own mixed with the rattle of automatic fire. He turned on Thompson, firing bullets from his transformed hands. Iron Knife's tomahawk moved without thought, split Walker's skull. But something crawled out, pure void given hunger. His medicine bundle flared under his uniform, but he couldn't reveal it. Instead, he grabbed a grenade from Thompson's corpse. The demo man had died with his hand on the pin. The explosion scattered the void thing, but they were already running, up the stairs, reality twisting. Mitchell stumbled. The floor grabbed him, pulled him through solid stone. Gone. The sounds of battle above had changed. Less gunfire, more screaming. Whatever was happening down here was affecting the whole castle. They burst into the main hall as the charges blew, found Alpha Company in a firefight with things that used to be human, bodies twisted into geometries that hurt to perceive. "Fall back! Everyone out!" Rangers fired and moved. The main hall was chaos, muzzle flashes strobing in the smoke, men screaming orders, screaming in pain. And through it all, those things that had been SS officers, now fused with their weapons, advancing like nightmares given form. Then the floor exploded upward. The tank thing emerged. What had once been an SS officer, now a living panzer. Armor plates shifted across its flesh like scales. Its head had become a turret, tracking targets with mechanical precision. The mouth cannon spoke, and Private Collins from Alpha Company ceased to exist from the waist up. "Bazooka! Someone get a fucking bazooka on that thing!" Iron Knife saw it. A fallen ranger, his hand still clutching an M1 rocket launcher. He dove, sliding across blood-slicked stone. As his hands found the weapon, he felt them. The spirits. His grandmother's voice mixed with a dozen others. Warriors who died here across centuries. Crusaders. Plague victims. Even some of the SS, their souls torn free before the corruption could claim them completely. There. The seam where flesh meets steel. Where the man ends and the weapon begins. Iron Knife didn't question. He shouldered the bazooka, let the spirits guide his aim. The rocket streaked across the hall, punching through a gap in the armor plates just below what had been the thing's heart. The explosion ripped it in half, but both halves kept fighting, the turret head spinning, firing, while the treaded lower body charged forward, crushing Rangers under steel flesh. Beside him, Corporal Anderson from Bravo Company jerked as something touched his shoulder, just a grazing touch from one of the weapon creatures. His hands immediately began fusing with his bar, metal flowing into meat. "No, no, no!" Anderson kept firing even as his fingers became one with the trigger. His skin turned gray, taking on the texture of gunmetal. But he turned the transformation on the enemy, his rapidly changing body pouring bullets into the advancing horrors. "Get out! I'll hold them! Get out!" His face was disappearing into the receiver of his weapon, but his voice still came through, distorted by steel. "Tell my wife! Tell her I—" Then he was gone. Just another weapon thing. But for a few seconds more, he kept firing at his former comrades' enemies before the corruption claimed his mind entirely. An explosion near the north wall sent pieces of the creatures flying. Iron Knife watched in horror as the fragments, bits of flesh-fused metal, scraps of Nazi uniform merged with skin, scattered like shrapnel. One mass hit Private Stevens from Baker Company, coating him like living tar. "Get it off! Get it off!" But it was already too late. The pieces were knitting together, using Stevens as a framework. His Ranger uniform disappeared under spreading gray Wehrmacht wool. His face vanished behind a death's head mask that grew from his skull. Within seconds, where Stevens had stood, an SS soldier emerged, but wrong, assembled from parts, movements jerky like a marionette. The thing that had been Stevens turned its newly formed MP-40 on his squad. Rangers scattered, returning fire. But how did you kill something built from your own dead? "We need to go. Now!" Iron Knife shouted. The spirits were screaming warnings. The explosions below had damaged whatever geometry held the great thing contained. It was rising, unfolding, coming. McGee rallied the survivors. "Fighting withdrawal by squads, move!" Outside the main entrance, dawn light showed more horrors. The children Davis's squad had freed weren't down. Rangers from the other companies had clearly tried. Small bodies lay scattered, torn by bullets, but they were reforming, crawling together, pieces finding pieces. "Burn them!" Someone had grabbed a flamethrower. Liquid fire washed over the reassembling children. They screamed, not in pain, but in frustration. The flames slowed their reformation but didn't stop it. One girl, the same one who'd smiled at Iron Knife, stood apart from the others. Half her head was gone from rifle fire, but she still spoke from what remained of her mouth. Too late. The door is open. He rises. He rises. Iron Knife put a full clip from a dropped Thompson into her. She danced under the impacts, laughing. Only when McGee added his own fire, then another Ranger with a bar, did she finally fall. And even then, her fingers kept moving, crawling toward them. The castle shuddered. Something vast was moving in its depths. "Everyone out! Move! Move!" 3 companies of Rangers, what was left of them, streamed from every exit. They'd made it maybe 200 yards into the forest when they heard them. Engines, aircraft engines, multiple. "Take cover!" someone shouted. Through gaps in the trees, Iron Knife saw them, a flight of P-47 Thunderbolts, silver against the dawn sky. Fighter bombers, bellies heavy with ordnance. Someone, somewhere, had called in close air support. Or maybe this had always been the backup plan. The first P-47 Dove, its engine screaming. 500-pound bombs tumbled from its wings. The pilot pulled up hard, clawing for altitude as the bombs impacted. The explosions walked across the castle grounds, each detonation shaking the earth. Ancient walls crumbled, towers that had stood for centuries vanished in clouds of dust and flame. But it was the third wave that did it. Whether by design or luck, bombs punched through into the depths where that thing writhed. For a moment, Iron Knife saw it clearly. The entity rising from the crater the bombs had made. Too many angles trying to exist in three-dimensional space. It screamed in frequencies that shattered teeth. Then the P-47's 50-caliber guns spoke. 8 guns per plane, 4 planes making their runs. Thousands of rounds poured into the thing. Where bullets hit wrong-angled flesh, reality sparked and tore. The thing tried to reach for the planes. Tentacles of unspace unfolded toward the sky. One P-47 flew through such a tendril. The aircraft emerged aged decades in seconds, its engine seizing. The pilot slumped over his stick. The Thunderbolt plowed into the forest half a mile away, but the bombs kept falling. The guns kept firing. And the thing, for all its otherworldly power, had been caught half-formed, half-born into this reality. The final explosion was different. Not fire and force, but implosion. The castle didn't collapse. It folded. Stone and mortar and the screaming thing all pulled inward to a single point. The air rushed in with a sound like God inhaling. Then silence. Where Wewelsburg Castle had stood, only a perfectly circular crater remained. 40 feet deep. The edges still smoked with heat that had nothing to do with temperature. At the center, something that might have been glass if glass could scream. The P-47s waggled their wings and turned west. Job done. One trailing smoke from the encounter with unreality. "Sound off!" Company commanders getting accountability through the ringing in everyone's ears. Second squad had lost Thompson, Walker, Mitchell, Davis, Henderson, Johnson. Only McGee and Iron Knife remained from the original 8. Alpha Company had lost 12 men. Bravo, 15. Charlie Company was down to 2/3 strength. Iron Knife found himself staring at the crater. The fighter bombers had killed the thing, or at least prevented its full manifestation. But he could feel it. The wrongness remained. A crack in the world that hadn't been there before. The door had been blown off its hinges, even if nothing had managed to come through. This time. McGee grabbed Iron Knife's arm. Blood ran from the lieutenant's nose, his ears. They all looked like that, marked by exposure to something human minds weren't meant to process. "Airstrike took out a munitions depot," he said quietly. "That's what we report. Secondary explosions. Nothing else." Iron Knife nodded. His hidden medicine bundle had cracked down the middle, the price of holding back what had tried to break through. Some of the children's pieces were still moving at the crater's edge, trying to crawl together, but rangers with flamethrowers were making sure they stayed separate. Stayed dead. "The pilots?" Iron Knife asked. "The one that went down." "Mechanical failure. Happens in combat." McGee's voice was flat. They both knew that pilot had aged 50 years in 5 seconds, if they found the body at all. The Rangers formed up, marched out, just soldiers who'd done their job. 3 hours later, they'd established a temporary command post in a commandeered farmhouse 2 miles from the crater. Rangers sat on the floor, against walls, anywhere they could find space. Medics worked on the wounded. Everyone tried not to think about what they'd seen. A jeep pulled up outside, engine rattling to a stop. Iron Knife didn't recognize the officer who stepped out, Lieutenant Colonel, by his oak leaves. Clean uniform, patrician features. The kind of staff officer who usually stayed well behind the lines. But his eyes were different. Sharp, calculating. The eyes of someone who'd seen reports that didn't fit in filing cabinets. "Lieutenant McGee," the officer called out. "Lieutenant Colonel Boyer, 3rd Army G2. Need a word." McGee struggled to his feet, exhaustion written in every movement. "Sir." "What happened here, Lieutenant?" the pilots reported. Boyer paused, choosing his words carefully. Unusual atmospheric conditions, and the crater doesn't match any known explosive pattern. McGee glanced at Iron Knife, then back to Boyer. Airstrike hit a munitions depot, sir. Secondary explosions. Castle was full of experimental weapons. Nazi wonder weapons program, maybe. Is that so? Boyer's tone suggested he wasn't buying it. And your casualties? Combat losses, sir. Heavy resistance. The SS fought to the last man. Boyer studied McGee for a long moment. And who would you say was instrumental in getting your men out alive? Without hesitation, McGee pointed. Sergeant Iron Knife, sir. We'd all be dead without him. Man has instincts like nothing I've ever seen. Knew exactly where to hit that tank thing. Let us out when things got hairy. Boyer's gaze shifted to Iron Knife. Something flickered in his expression. Interest, maybe, or recognition of something he'd been looking for. I see. Lieutenant, get your men fed and rested. Full debriefing can wait until tomorrow. Boyer's eyes stayed on Iron Knife. But I need a word with the sergeant. Privately. McGee looked between them, confused but recognizing an order. Yes, sir. Boyer headed for the door. Walk with me, Sergeant. Iron Knife followed the lieutenant colonel outside. The spring evening was cool, a relief after the stifling farmhouse packed with exhausted rangers. They walked past the sentries, past the vehicles, until they stood at the edge of a fallow field. In the distance, smoke still rose from the direction of the crater. Boyer pulled out a silver cigarette case, offered one. Iron Knife shook his head. You know, Sergeant, Boyer said, lighting up. Third Army has been encountering some unusual situations lately. Things that don't fit standard combat doctrine. Things that require soldiers with exceptional instincts. Iron Knife said nothing, watching the smoke drift on the evening breeze. Your lieutenant says you have those instincts. Says you knew exactly where to aim that bazooka. Says you navigated when compasses failed. Says you kept your head when trained soldiers were losing theirs. Just lucky, sir. Lucky. Boyer smiled without humor. I don't believe in luck, Sergeant. I believe in capability. In soldiers who can adapt to situations that shouldn't exist. They stood in silence for a moment. Behind them, Iron Knife could hear the farmhouse, muffled voices, someone laughing with the edge of hysteria that came after combat. Normal sounds. Human sounds. So different from what they'd faced in that castle. Sir. General Patton is putting together a special unit. Hand-picked men. Americans who've proven themselves in extreme situations. Boyer flicked ash from his cigarette. The war in Europe is ending, but there are other conflicts coming, situations that will require unique approaches. I'm just a ranger, sir. I follow orders. Of course. Boyer turned to face him fully. But what if those orders took you to places where standard training isn't enough? What if you had to face things that most soldiers couldn't handle? Iron Knife felt the weight of the offer. Part of him wanted to refuse. He'd seen enough, lost enough. His medicine bundle was cracked, his connection to the spirit world wounded. He just wanted to go home, find peace. Then the wind shifted. Just slightly, but enough to carry something with it. The scent of sage and sweetgrass. Prairie wind, though they stood in the heart of Germany. And in that wind, a familiar presence. His grandmother. Not visible this time, not to his eyes. But there, in the rustling of leaves, in the whisper of grass, in the old way, the subtle way. The way she'd first taught him to feel the spirits when he was just a boy on the reservation. The wind circled him once, warm despite the cool evening. A blessing, an encouragement, a push down the warrior's path. This is the way, grandson. The people need guardians in this new world just as they did in the old. Then just whined again, just a spring evening in Germany. Boyer was still talking, unaware of what had just happened. Specialized training, best equipment, operational autonomy. It's volunteer only, Sergeant. And I can't tell you much more unless you're interested. Iron Knife touched his cracked medicine bundle through his uniform, felt the warmth there. Not healed, but not broken beyond repair. Like the world itself, wounded, but still fighting. When do I start, sir? Boyer smiled. A real smile this time. Transport leaves at 0600. Pack light. Where you're going, standard gear is just the beginning. He ground out his cigarette under his heel. Oh, and Sergeant, whatever instincts kept you alive in there, trust them. You're going to need them. They walked back toward the farmhouse. Boyer split off toward his jeep while Iron Knife headed for the door. He paused before entering, looking back at the field where his grandmother's spirit had touched him. The sun was setting over the German countryside. Somewhere, that crater still smoked with unnatural heat. Somewhere, other doors were being tested. Other things trying to push through. But his grandmother had shown him the way. The warrior's path continued. Iron Knife knew what others couldn't or wouldn't understand. In that smoking crater, something stirred. Not dead. Not alive. Waiting. The bombers had won this battle, but the war, the real war, had just begun. And knowing is half the battle. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. I'm Thomas Richter, and it's been an honor to share this story with you. If you're ready for your next mission, we've got a full arsenal of series waiting for you on this platform. Each one is locked and loaded with the kind of stories that keep you pressing forward no matter what. For those who march to the beat of our soundtrack, all of our music is deployed across every major streaming platform. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, you name it. Just search for Springfield Syndrome or the audiobook title to add it to your playlist. Your support keeps us in the fight, and we'd be grateful if you'd drop us a review wherever you grab this audiobook. Your feedback is our intel. It helps us improve our operations and helps other listeners find their next objective. Stay strong, stay sharp, and remember, the only easy day was yesterday. This is Thomas Richter, signing off.